This is the Israeli Palestinian issue, a story of complex events, agreements, meetings, and wars. No matter how much one tries to understand what has happened, the situation remains incredibly complicated. Yes, the Israeli Palestinian conflict is deeply complex. Even the most committed efforts to explain it can never truly cover everything. This video is intended for those seeking an explanation of the events without taking sides. The war. Why is there a war between Palestinians and Israelis? The conflict stems from what appears to be a simple issue. Two people claim ownership of the same land. Israeli Jews believe they have the right to control Palestine because it is the birthplace of the Jewish people. Palestinian Arabs argue that they lived there before the arrival of Israeli Jews and are now being forcibly displaced. Remarkably, these two people are historically related, with their common origins even found in biblical stories. Jews and Arabs are both Semitic peoples, believed to descend from Shem, one of Noah's sons. Arabs are said to descend from Ishmael, the son of Abraham, while Israelites descend from another of Abraham's sons, Isaac, specifically from his son Jacob, also called Israel. These are, of course, religious stories and should be taken as such. Still, they illustrate how difficult it is to determine who has the right to the land. Historically, the region has seen endless waves of migration, war, and conquest. Origins of the conflict and the escalation in 1948. The conflict began in the early 20th century and escalated after the founding of the State of Israel in 1948. The only serious attempt at peace came in the 1990s, but it ultimately failed. To understand the dynamics, we need to step back and look at the region and its people. Geographically, Palestine is a region of about 28,000 square kilometers, roughly the size of the Italian regions of Piedmont and Aosta Valley combined. It borders Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. About 60% of the land is desert. Its main water sources are the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee, Lake Tiberias, and the Dead Sea. For millennia, it has been a strategic crossroads between the Middle East and Europe, highly valued both commercially and militarily. More recently, natural gas and oil fields have been discovered off the Mediterranean coast of Palestine. Sadly, war in this region has been the norm for millennia, not the exception, and religion has often been a contributing factor. Jerusalem, in particular, is considered sacred in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. One of the most obvious differences between Jews and Arabs is religion. Most Arabs adopted Islam in the 7th century CE and became predominantly Muslim. However, it's important to note not all Arabs are Muslims. Arab refers to an ethnic group, while Muslim refers to followers of Islam. For example, over 100,000 Christian Arabs live in Palestine. Adding to the complexity, there are also many people of Slavic origin from the former Soviet Union, among other ethnic groups. Another major difference between Jews and Arabs lies in their historical trajectories. Starting in the 7th century CE, Arabs expanded to create a vast empire and spread their religion, culture, and scientific knowledge. Jews, on the other hand, have often struggled for survival, dispersed around the world, frequently facing exclusion and discrimination. This culminated in the Holocaust, the systematic genocide carried out by Nazi Germany and its allies, including Italy before and during World War II. Palestine and parts of it has changed hands many times throughout history. Israelites, Babylonians, Macedonians, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, and eventually the Ottoman Empire, which ruled from 1516 until the end of World War I. Zionism in Palestine. This brings us to a critical turning point, the 1800s to 1900s. At that time, most of the population in Palestine was Arab. However, there was still a small Jewish minority, mostly dispersed globally. Here we must introduce a key concept: Zionism. Zionism comes from Zion, the hill where Jerusalem's ancient core was founded. It's an ideology that began in the late 1800s, promoted by writer and activist Theodor Herzl, which later became a political movement. Its aim was to establish an independent Jewish state where Jews could immigrate and live free from persecution. The chosen land for this new homeland, Palestine, considered by Jews to be their promised land, also known as Eretz Israel. The Zionist movement sought to settle the land agriculturally. It needed money and international recognition. With help from Jewish communities in Europe and America, funds were raised to purchase land. At the same time, famine and economic crises forced many Palestinian Arabs to sell their property. After World War I, Palestine became a British protectorate. Britain was supportive of a future Jewish state, viewing it as a strategic ally in a predominantly Arab Muslim region. The persecution of Jews, especially the Holocaust, led many to seek refuge in Palestine. These events allowed the Jewish population in Palestine to grow significantly, from 11% in 1922 to 32% by 1947, while Arabs made up about 60%. This growth created enormous tensions. Arabs watched their lands being colonized and responded by forming paramilitary groups. Jews also created their own defense organizations. Violent clashes began, especially after World War II. The birth of the State of Israel, Britain handed the problem over to the United Nations. In 1947, the UN passed Resolution 181, which proposed splitting the territory into two states, a Jewish state, Israel, and an Arab state, Palestine. Jerusalem and Bethlehem were to be international zones. But here's the detail. Although Jews made up only 32% of the population, they were allocated 55% of the land, including the most fertile areas. The Arabs, who made up 60% of the population, received 44%. This imbalance seemed unfair to many. Why such a decision? Many Western countries supported the idea of a Jewish state in a region dominated by Arab Muslim countries. Jewish communities worldwide had political influence and could exert pressure. The Jewish population in Palestine, though smaller, was wealthier, better organized, and more unified than the divided Arab population. Many Arab leaders had supported Nazi Germany during World War II, either openly or tacitly, and were seen as part of the defeated faction. The Palestinians rejected the UN plan. The Jews accepted it and declared the independence of the State of Israel. Nakba and the 1948 war. After the declaration, the situation spiraled. In the months between the UN vote and Israeli independence, hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs were expelled or fled. This is known in Arabic as the Nakba or catastrophe. Neighboring Arab countries, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and Egypt, united under the Arab League, attacked Israel. Yet Israel not only resisted but counterattacked, gaining more territory. Instead of the original 55%, Israel now controlled 78% of Palestine, the Green Line, and the division of land. The remaining land wasn't given to the Palestinians. It was divided between Egypt, which took Gaza, and Jordan, which took the West Bank, also called Cisjordan. Jerusalem was split. West Jerusalem went to Israel, East Jerusalem to Jordan. The Green Line was drawn to mark this division. It was recognized by the UN at the time. The Six-Day War of 1967, tensions remained high. In 1967, Israel, fearing an imminent attack, launched a preemptive strike, defeating its neighbors in 6 days. It took Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. The UN declared these conquests illegal, but Israel retained control. Eventually, Sinai was returned to Egypt after the Camp David Accords, but the Golan Heights remains under Israeli control and is gradually being colonized. Post-1980 developments. In the mid-1980s, Israel acknowledged the need to negotiate with Palestinians, particularly with the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization. In 1988, the PLO declared Palestinian independence, which was recognized by many UN members, though largely symbolic. Meanwhile, more radical factions emerged, especially Hamas, which led the first Intifada uprising, involving protests, boycotts, and violent clashes. Over 6 years, many lives were lost, primarily Palestinian, the Oslo Accords, and beyond. In 1993, with US mediation, the Oslo Accords were signed. Israel and the PLO recognized each other. A new governing body, the Palestinian Authority, PA, was created to administer Gaza and parts of the West Bank. Israel began withdrawing from Gaza, but retained control over airspace, borders, and key infrastructure. The West Bank was divided into 3 zones, some fully under Palestinian control, some jointly controlled, civil by Palestinians, military by Israelis, some under full Israeli control. Hopes were high, but the peace process ultimately failed. Second Intifada and further conflict, Israeli settlement expansion continued in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. In 2017, the US recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, fueling more tensions. From the 1990s onward, Hamas organized numerous attacks. The early 2000s saw a dramatic escalation, over 100 attacks sparking the Second Intifada, with thousands of deaths, again mostly Palestinians. In response, Israel built massive separation walls around Gaza and the West Bank. Conditions in Gaza deteriorated. Extreme poverty, unemployment over 50%, contaminated water and electricity only for a few hours per day. Such desperation enabled Hamas to gain more support, providing social aid while also launching rocket attacks. Israel responded with bombings, often causing civilian casualties, especially since Hamas militants often hide among the population. The West Bank today. After Hamas won the 2006 elections, a civil war broke out between Palestinian factions. Hamas took control of Gaza while the PA, led by Fatah under Mahmoud Abbas Abu Mazen, retained control of the West Bank. In 2012, the UN granted Palestine observer state status, allowing participation in General Assembly debates but not voting rights. Internal divisions within Israel too faces internal challenges. It has had repeated elections. The current government, led by Netanyahu, holds a slim majority and has taken increasingly hardline and authoritarian stances. Israeli society is deeply divided between secular Zionists, ultra-Orthodox Jews, and about 20% Arab citizens whose rights are steadily being eroded. In 2018, a law defined Israel not as a democracy, but as the national state of the Jewish people, stripping Arabic of its status as an official language and legitimizing settlement expansion, international alliances. Internationally, countries like the United States support and fund Israel. In 2020, the Abraham Accords normalized relations between Israel and some Arab states, like the UAE and Bahrain. On the other hand, countries like Iran, Qatar, and Hezbollah, a Lebanese political military group, support the Palestinian cause and Hamas. Final thoughts. I hope this overview helped convey just how complex the Israeli-Palestinian conflict really is. If I've made any major omissions or errors, please feel free to point them out and continue the discussion in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in my next video.